Hey gamers, it's Kwing here, and yes, Game Nights Entertainment has returned for another exciting year of epic video reviews. Actually, recently in 2009, I was named the Red Ranger of video reviews, which frankly, I am honored, guys. I started out a small reviewer and eventually became a paid professional, and almost 200 reviews later, well, here we are. Anyway, it should come as no surprise how big of a fan of CastleVania I really am. But does this game hold up to the legacy of the CastleVania series, or the legendary Game Boy port that this game is based after? Well, you'll have to watch our review to find out. The story is set in 1591, a century before Simon Belmont fought against the King of Evil. Trevor's descendant, Christopher Belmont, takes up the ancestral whip and plans on destroying Dracula like his ancestors. CastleVania Rebirth has finally released on the WiiWare, releasing in Japan first. Rather than a remake of CastleVania The Adventure, this game is actually a reimagining of the series, and the first of many Rebirth Castlevania games, or so our sources tell us. In fact, the game's ending even hints at a second game. Our guess would be Belmont's Revenge, which took place during 1606, and had Christopher rescuing his son from Dracula. CastleVania The Adventure Rebirth is a side-scrolling action-adventure game and part of Konami's legendary Castlevania family. Oddly enough, this game was actually re-released during Adventure's 20th birthday. How cool is that? The game consists of 6 levels, where each level has an alternate path so you can skip the mini-boss battles. But be warned, gamers, these aren't just shortcuts. In fact, you'll fight some beefy undead opponents and most likely lose. Like Dracula X, players find alternate paths by finding hidden keys. These keys unlock power-ups, hidden bonuses, and of course, alternate routes. Like its source material, gamers can upgrade the whip 3 times. You do this by collecting floating green souls. Although the Flame Whip is only a temporary power-up in this game, so use it wisely. Alright, let's discuss the differences from CastleVania Adventure with CastleVania Rebirth. Now, Rebirth features sub-weapons, climbing up stairs, 3 difficulty settings, and players can have up to 9 lives. Unlike Adventure on Game Boy, which allowed the player a maximum of 3 lives, no sub-weapons and hearts were actually used to regain your health, not meat. Although both Adventure games are timed, so that remains virtually the same. Like all Castlevania games before it, the goal is to travel through Transylvania, confronting evil, taking out bosses, cheating death, and of course slaying Dracula. Hero, thy name is Belmont. Alrighty, let's talk about the gameplay. Other than the differences I mentioned, not much has really changed. Gamers can play the game using a classic controller, GameCube controller, or the Wiimote held NES style. Can you guess which we use? It doesn't really matter, but yeah, we used NES. Moving on, players travel from one side of the screen to the next, whipping monsters, jumping on objects, climbing stairs, and using sub-weapons. But the gameplay does change based on your difficulty. If you're playing this on easy, Christopher doesn't take too much damage. Playing on normal and hard is filled with lots of ripping out your hair moments. When Christopher is hit, he'll be pushed backward. The classic mode is a new gameplay mechanic we haven't seen in a lot of the newer Castlevania games. Basically what classic mode is what traditional Castlevania games were during the NES days, where your characters jump back when they're damaged, you can't whip in the air, and you're also limited to how many sub-weapons you can use. Other than that, the gameplay for this game is excellent, and one mighty impressive WiiWare game too. Sadly, this game does have some minor issues. Playing this game on normal feels more like you're playing it on hard. Since Christopher can't take too much damage at all, navigating through the traps in, say, stage 3 and 4 is bordering on your insanity. Luckily, this game gives you unlimited continues and checkpoints, but even so, that's not enough. Playing the game on normal is what hard should have been, and hard is too painful to play. I can't get past the 3rd stage playing this game on hard. It's that unforgiving. I mean, that's messed up. The jump mechanic seems a little off in this game too. The more you need to rely on jumping in, say, the Castle Keep or Clock Tower, you're more likely to fall to your death because of the clumsy jumping mechanic. My last complaint was with the music itself. Now personally, I don't mind the music, and I understand Namiki-san, or whatever, was doing arrangements of past Castlevania games as a whole, as what they did with Contra Rebirth. However, it would have been nice to hear arrangements of the adventure game that this game is supposed to be a reimagining of, instead of, say, rearrangements of Castlevania Bloodlines, Chronicles, Dracula's Curse, and others. Now, Castlevania music is supposed to have a Baroque feel to it, giving it a gothic, edgy, adventurous, and even beautiful vibe. The music is what increases the epic factor to Castlevania as a whole, and without it, well, it doesn't add up. You want to know what this music sounds like to me? It's a mixture of Sonic 2 and Ghosts and Goblins meets Turtles in Time. I'm serious, I was waiting for Mikey to shout "Cowabunga" and pop out from the foreground or something like that. Again, this is all minor complaints, but ugh. Luckily for us, this game's uberness outweighs its badness. First off, we do not agree with most of the complaints about the game's art direction and the graphics. This game looks just as good, if not better, than Castlevania Dracula X or Vampire's Kiss for the Super Nintendo. The foregrounds is what really makes this game come to life though. Each level is modeled after a past Castlevania stage, and the overall presentation and look of the levels is just impressive. Just about all the monsters and boss designs in this game have been updated, similar to how they appeared in Portrait of Ruin and other classic DS and Game Boy Advance Castlevania games. The second thing we liked about this game is the use of the sub-weapons. Without the sub-weapons, this game would drive one batty because it's tough. Now, the sub-weapons differ a little bit compared to the other Castlevania games. In fact, Christopher in this one can throw numerous crosses without needing to upgrade his weapons like his descendant Simon had to in Super Castlevania. Actually, the cross is a very important weapon in this game, and it's perfect for defeating the Golem, Death. Even the Prince of Darkness himself can't face the cross. Like past Castlevania games, your health is restored by finding meat, as opposed to using hearts to heal like the Adventure Game Boy game. Meat is scattered throughout the levels, and it isn't that difficult to find. However, the trick is taking the alternate paths to find the meat, which brings me to another epic quality about this game, the keys. The keys are great because they add another dimension of replay value for this game, which in turn gives you more incentive to find the keys and explore more of the castle and get the most for your 1000 Wii points. Doing so actually skips the stages that had the mini-bosses too, and trust us, if you're playing this game on normal, or dare I say it hard, skipping the mini-bosses saves on a lot of frustration and unnecessary deaths. Speaking of boss battles, they are incredibly epic in this game too. Our favorites had to be the Golem, the Vampire Lady, and of course, Death himself. While Death may have only one form in this game, he is anything but a pushover. Fighting Dracula is filled with tons of nostalgia from the first Castlevania game on the NES too. That's a very good thing, and it tugs on my heartstrings. Thank you, Konami. Needless to say, this game combines classic Castlevania gameplay with stuff that we're seeing on the DS and Game Boy Advance to this day. Still, the defining moment of this game comes down not to the graphics, but the gameplay. Other than the stuff we didn't like about this game, the gameplay is still very solid, no matter the difficulty. Instead of taking more damage and higher difficulties, the game also adds more challenges and monsters too, which gives players more than enough reason to play through the game at least 3 or 4 times. All in all, this is a fantastic WiiWare game. It has great SNES-inspired visuals and music, solid gameplay, a weak storyline, okay sound effects, 6 levels, 5 levels with alternate passageways, hidden bosses, the ability to skip mini-bosses, awesome sub-weapons, whip upgrades, and average replay value. So Game Night's Entertainment gives Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth for the WiiWare a 8.8 out of 10. Contra Rebirth was a fun game, but what made us like that game a little bit more was the fact that the co-op feature was excellent. Not to mention the game only took about 12 or 13 minutes to play through, but it was just a fun running and gunning shoot 'em up game. While Adventure Rebirth is a much longer game, it does have its own set of shortcomings that we really can't place it above Contra Rebirth. However, both games are definitely worth the 1,000 Wii points price point. Frankly, what I was really upset about this game is the fact that it wasn't a remake of CastleVania The Adventure. Rather, it was a reimagining, and instead it felt like Vampire's Kiss except much shorter. Well anyway, thanks so much for watching another Game Nights video review. Keep it locked here for new content all the time, like trailers, developer interviews, gameplay vids, and don't forget to listen to our radio program every Wednesday. This is Kwing as always saying God bless and happy gaming. Until we meet again, gamers. See ya!
Rebirth